I'll never forget that moment. I walked into my brother's wedding thinking I was part of the family, thinking I had always been the one supporting him every step of the way. But instead, I was treated like a stranger. The bride, Vanessa, with a smile as sharp as a blade, turned to me and sweetly said, "Why don't you stand by the bathroom wall? It'll keep the family photos clean." My seat. Taken by a stranger, her cousins plus one. No one in my family spoke up. Not a single look of sympathy. So I calmly walked to the gift table and took back the $5,000 envelope I had prepared with genuine love and intention. When they realized I was leaving, I simply said, "Don't worry. I'll stay out of the frame forever." But that wasn't the end. 3 days later, in the middle of their honeymoon, my brother Ryan called me sobbing. All it took was one message from me. I woke up to 168 missed calls. What they didn't know was this. I had been the one quietly keeping his company alive, and now I needed just one word to undo it all. Withdraw. If you've ever been the one quietly pushed aside by your own family, stay with me. Because the story I'm about to tell will show you sometimes silence is the most powerful weapon we have. My name is Evelyn Walker. I'm 35, a structural engineer living in San Diego. I've built bridges, towers, and entire systems designed to withstand earthquakes. Quietly successful, comfortably single, and fiercely independent. But if you ask my family, they'll tell you I'm the good daughter, reliable, responsible, and never the one to cause trouble. That's all I've ever been to them. Never the golden child. Never the one they celebrated. That title belonged to my younger brother Ryan from the moment he was born. Growing up, Ryan was the center of gravity in our household. If he sneezed, someone ran for tissues. If he stumbled, the world came to a halt. Meanwhile, I learned to make myself small. I got straight A's, made honor roll every semester, and quietly landed a scholarship to a top university. When I got a job offer in New York after graduation, I turned it down. Not because I didn't want it, but because my parents said they needed me closer. Ryan was struggling at the time, bouncing between jobs, trying to find his path. Family comes first, they said, and I believed them. Later, when I was offered a chance to transfer abroad to London, a dream opportunity, my father looked me in the eye and said, "You're the stable one, Evelyn. Your brother needs someone here while he finds his footing." So I stayed. Again. I watched my friends leave, marry, start families in cities they loved. I remained in California within an hour's drive from home, always the backup plan. Always the quiet support beam in a house no one realized was resting on me. Ryan, on the other hand, was the family's chosen one. He's got ambition, my mom would say, even when he was between jobs for the 4th time in 2 years. He's got a spark, my father would grin while I was paying his overdue parking tickets behind the scenes. "You know your brother's not like you," my mother reminded me once when I asked why I always had to clean up his messes. "He's a dreamer. You're practical. We rely on you." That word rely stuck with me like a splinter. It wasn't trust. It wasn't respect. It was a need that was never acknowledged, only expected. I was the one they leaned on, but never lifted up. And then came Vanessa. Vanessa Monroe, Ryan's fiancée, entered the picture like a force of nature wrapped in luxury perfume and social savvy. She worked in branding and influencer marketing, knew how to pose for a photo like she'd trained for Vogue, and carried herself like a curated Instagram feed. From the moment we met, she looked me up and down and smiled that tight, polite kind of smile that told me she'd already decided I didn't fit. I didn't match her aesthetic, and I never would. To be clear, I was polite. I tried. I welcomed her. I asked about her work, complimented her shoes, even helped her carry boxes into my parents' house during one holiday visit. But she never saw me. Not really. She didn't care that I was an engineer. She once referred to me as Ryan's older sister who works in construction or something. The way she said it, light dismissive with a shrug, made my mother laugh and nod. "Evelyn likes her quiet little world," she added, as if I were a hermit in a cave rather than a woman who paid for her own townhouse and traveled solo to Greece the year before. One afternoon during a family dinner where Vanessa joined us for the first time, The conversation turned to Ryan's business idea, some startup about bespoke furniture or eco-friendly interiors. I don't remember the exact pitch. What I do remember is my father leaning back, nodding proudly, saying, "This is the kind of thing our Ryan was born to do." My mother chimed in, "He's going to carry this family name into something great." Then she turned to me and said, "You've always been the good one, Evelyn, the one who keeps the peace." I smiled, but something inside me cracked. It wasn't the first time I'd heard that line, but that night it landed differently. As if I wasn't part of the legacy. As if I was the caretaker of it, not a contributor. Later in the kitchen, while we were clearing dishes, my father put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Con gai lon, di fai bit nyung em try na moi lang ngui gan vac." His words hung in the air, Vietnamese echoing softly in a Californian home. The eldest daughter should step aside. The son will carry the family name. He said it like a proverb, like a truth passed down for generations. And maybe it was in his mind, but to me it was confirmation. I wasn't meant to shine. I was meant to support. And somehow that had become my entire identity in this family. What no one realized was that support beams carry a lot of weight, and even they can crack. I didn't know it at the time, but that quiet ache in my chest, that tired, resigned acceptance of my place, wasn't going to stay quiet much longer. Because 3 weeks later, I'd receive a wedding invitation that would push everything to the edge. Not because of the venue or the guest list or even the dress code, but because in that wedding, in the one day meant to celebrate family, I would finally understand just how invisible I'd become. And what happens when someone you've ignored for too long decides not to stay in the background anymore. I still remember the first time Ryan came to me not as a brother full of pride, but as a man quietly unraveling. It was early spring, just a few weeks after that family dinner, where I'd been reduced to the good one in front of Vanessa. I had tried to put it behind me, to chalk it up to old habits and generational thinking. But when Ryan called and asked if we could meet for lunch, something about his voice told me this wasn't just a casual catch-up. We sat at a small bistro halfway between my place and his. He looked sharper than usual, his shirt crisp, his watch new, but his eyes were restless, darting between the menu and the sidewalk outside like he was waiting for someone else to show up and bail him out. "I've got this opportunity," he said, barely touching the sandwich he ordered. Furniture warehousing. High-end pieces, sustainable materials, all locally sourced. There's a supplier lined up and a potential investor if I can show proof of facility and initial operations. I listened. He talked fast, hopeful words tumbling out as if momentum alone would sell the idea. I didn't interrupt. I waited. Then came the pause, the part where his shoulders sank and his voice dropped. "I need a co-signer," he finally admitted. "For the warehouse lease. They won't give me the space unless someone with more stability is on paper." He didn't have to say more. I knew what stability meant. A reliable credit score, proof of consistent income, a name that didn't carry red flags. Mine. I leaned back, folded my arms, and let the silence stretch. He fidgeted, tapping a sugar packet against the table. I asked one question. "Why me?" His smile faltered. "Because you're the only one who can. And you know I wouldn't ask unless it mattered." That wasn't true. Ryan had asked for plenty over the years, rides, money, help with resumes, introductions, even rent once. But something in his face, the slight tremble of desperation behind the charm, made me hesitate. I didn't say yes, not right away. I told him I'd think about it. That night my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice was soft, lower than usual, like she was trying not to cry. "He told you, didn't he?" she asked. "About the business." I didn't respond. "Your brother's trying," she said, her words trembling. "He's finally got something that's his. Just this once, Evelyn. Help him." I could hear my father in the background. One time he said firmly, "Just help him this once and we'll never ask again." But of course they would. They always had. Still, I heard myself say, "I'll think about it." By the end of the week, I had signed the paperwork. I reviewed every clause, every risk, and signed as co-signer for a warehouse lease and equipment line. My name went on documents I didn't own, tethered to a business I didn't believe in, simply because I was the only one whose signature mattered. It wasn't just a legal move. It was a tether. And I tightened it around myself quietly. Ryan hugged me outside the leasing office. "I owe you big time," he said. "Seriously, Evelyn, I won't forget this." But he did. Over the next 6 months, the warehouse opened, orders came in, but delays piled up. A supplier dropped out. A piece of imported stock was damaged in shipping. Cash flow slowed. And one night, just after midnight, my phone lit up again. It was Ryan. "I hate to ask," he started. "You don't hate to ask," I said, already opening my banking app. "I just need to float payroll this week. I'll pay you back, I swear." I sent him $3,000. A month later, it was another 2. No one else knew. Not our parents, not Vanessa, not even my closest friends. Ryan and I kept it between us. I didn't want to embarrass him. I didn't want to make it harder. I told myself I was being a good sister, the dependable one, the one they could rely on. I wasn't angry, not yet. I wasn't even disappointed. I just accepted that this was the role I played, invisible and essential, like the wiring behind a wall that keeps everything lit but is never seen. But the thank you never came. Not the real kind. Not a note, not a heartfelt message, not even a gesture beyond the same tired text. "Appreciate it, sis." Sometimes I wondered if Vanessa even knew the extent of it. If she knew her engagement party, complete with custom catering and flower walls, had happened while I was quietly covering Ryan's shortfall with my own savings. They were planning their wedding by then, choosing colors and venues, debating hashtags and guest lists. My name came up, I'm sure, but never for what I had done. I wasn't part of the foundation. I was just expected to show up, smile, and stay out of the way. And for a while I convinced myself that was enough. Because family comes first. Because love means sacrifice. Because if no one else kept the ship afloat, it would sink. What I didn't realize yet was that the ship was already taking on water, and they hadn't even noticed which parts of it were mine. A few weeks after co-signing the final agreement to save Ryan's struggling business, I came home to find a thin, cream-colored envelope tucked between 2 junk mail flyers. No courier, no call, no handwritten note, just a generic wedding invitation stamped with my name and address. It had no personal touch, no warmth. The kind of formality you extend to a distant colleague or an old neighbor, not to the sister of the groom. Not to the person who had signed her financial future away for him. The postmark told me it had been mailed over 10 days ago. I checked the date, just 3 weeks until the wedding. A weekend vineyard ceremony outside the city. No RSVP call, just an online link. I stared at it for a moment, then placed it on the kitchen counter like it was something fragile I didn't want to break. Part of me wanted to believe it was just an oversight. That maybe someone else handled the mailing. That it was late because of a glitch in the system, not because I had fallen through the cracks of my own family's memory. But the more I thought about it, the more the silence began to feel intentional. The bridal shower came and went. I only knew about it because I saw the pictures on Vanessa's Instagram the following Monday. A perfectly curated spread, pink and gold balloons, champagne towers, meticulously wrapped gifts. Captioned, "Surrounded by my favorite women." I wasn't in a single frame. Not because I wasn't photogenic, but because I hadn't been invited. She knew I lived just 20 minutes away. She knew I was free on weekends. I had even seen her that very week at my parents' house when she dropped off fabric swatches and discussed the reception layout with my mother. No mention of a gathering. No offhand comment. Just that same tight-lipped smile and a glance past my shoulder as if I were already fading from the frame. At first I felt embarrassed. Maybe I had missed something. Maybe the invite had been lost. Maybe it had been a small affair. But then came the story posts. Dozens of clips from the day games, toasts, laughter. A few of the extended family were there. Even my cousin's teenage daughter. Not me. The next weekend, my cousin June came over for coffee. She had always been the most grounded of our relatives. a single mom who worked 2 jobs but never missed a birthday. We hadn't spoken in months, but I think she could sense something was off. She brought over a bottle of wine and 2 slices of cake. Halfway through our second glass, she leaned in and said, "I'm sorry you weren't at the bridal shower. Honestly, I assumed you were traveling." "I wasn't invited," I said simply. She blinked. "Seriously?" I nodded. Her eyes narrowed. "That's weird. You're the groom's sister. I figured you were helping plan it." I shook my head. "Apparently I don't fit the vibe." She didn't laugh. She looked angry, but not surprised. Then she showed me a picture, one I hadn't seen online. It was a group photo from a family gathering last Christmas. Vanessa had posted it to her private Facebook a few months ago, but June had saved it. I was in the original picture, standing near the fireplace next to Ryan. But in Vanessa's post, I had been cropped out. At first, I didn't want to believe it. Maybe it was just how the frame was cut. Maybe I'd stepped out too far. But no, the edge of my sweater was still visible, a sliver of my hand even. But my face, gone. The caption on the edited version read, "Love this family. Can't wait to officially join." It hit me then. I wasn't just being overlooked. I was being erased. Quietly, deliberately, frame by frame. My presence wasn't just forgotten, it was being scrubbed for aesthetic. Vanessa didn't want me there. Not at the shower, not in the photos, maybe not even at the wedding. Still, I RSVP'd yes. I told myself I was being mature, that I was rising above it, that family events sometimes come with awkwardness, and it was better to show up and smile than to cause a ripple. But the truth was simpler. I wanted to see how far they'd go, how invisible I'd become. And somewhere deep down, I think I was still clinging to the hope that Ryan would notice, that on his wedding day, in the middle of all the curated perfection, he'd see me for what I was, his sister, the one who held the foundation together when everything threatened to fall apart. But I was beginning to realize that maybe Ryan didn't see anything at all anymore. Maybe he never did. The sun was warm that morning, but my hands were cold on the steering wheel. I had driven over an hour out of the city to reach the vineyard, replaying every line of the invitation in my head, as if there had been some hidden message between the printed dates and calligraphy. I arrived early out of habit, not excitement. I sat in my car for 5 full minutes before I opened the door, adjusted the hem of my slate blue dress, and made my way toward the entrance. The venue was stunning in the way most wedding venues are, sun-drenched, curated, trimmed to perfection. There were delicate signs painted in cursive pointing guests toward wine tastings and photo booths. A string quartet played something gentle and generic. For a moment, I let myself believe that maybe the tension I'd been carrying was mine alone. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe today would be better. Then I saw the seating chart. It was displayed on an oversized mirror propped elegantly against a gold easel. A floral garland framed the top. I walked up slowly, scanning the names. Table 1, Parents of the Bride. Table 2, Bridal Party. Table 3, Extended Family. Table 4, Table 5, Table 6. I read it again more carefully. Then a third time. My name wasn't there. Thinking maybe there had been a typo, I walked up to one of the planners, a young woman in a black headset holding a clipboard. I smiled politely. "Hi, sorry to bother you, but I think there might be a mistake. I don't see my name on the chart." Evelyn Hale. Her expression changed. Just slightly. The kind of look someone gives when they know something you don't want to hear. "Oh," she said, flipping a page. "Right. You're Ryan's sister." I nodded. "There were some last-minute adjustments," she continued. "You're actually seated by the west wall, just beyond the photo area." I turned my head. The west wall was adjacent to the restrooms, near a cluster of spare folding chairs stacked beside a utility shelf. There were no tables, no centerpieces, no other names. "I'm sorry," I said slowly. "You mean I don't have a table?" She hesitated. The bride's family had a few unexpected +1s fly in last minute. It was tight. "Right. I said quietly, and thanked her. I started walking toward the seating she mentioned. My heels clicked softly against the concrete path. I passed groups of guests laughing, clinking glasses, posing for pictures. Near the edge of the main reception hall, I saw 4 chairs hastily arranged near the wall, none labeled, all facing the side of the room. And then I saw it. One chair did have a name card. It was handwritten, not printed like the others. But the name wasn't mine. It read Tiffany, Marla's guest. I didn't know Tiffany. I barely remembered who Marla was. But Tiffany was already seated chatting animatedly with a group of people I didn't recognize. My chair, if there ever had been one, was gone. Before I could react, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Oh, good," Vanessa said, breezing past with a flute of champagne in her hand. "You found your spot." I turned, blinking. She paused, smiled brightly, then lowered her voice just enough to be cutting. "Why don't you stand by the bathroom wall? It'll keep the family photos looking clean." I froze. She didn't wait for a reply. She laughed lightly, turned on her heel, and floated away toward the patio where the rest of the bridal party was gathering. For a few seconds, I stood perfectly still. Not embarrassed, not angry, just hollow. People were passing me, waving, brushing by without stopping. My own parents didn't notice me. No one came to check. No one called my name. I wasn't late. I wasn't an afterthought. I was invisible. Then my eyes landed on the gift table. It was draped in white linen and sat beneath a handmade sign that read, "Grateful and Blessed." Stacks of wrapped boxes were lined up beside crystal vases full of cards and envelopes. And there, beneath a small satin ribbon, was the envelope I had placed there not an hour ago. Handwritten in gold ink. My name signed at the bottom. Inside, a personal note and a check for $5,000. I had spent days deciding what amount felt appropriate. It wasn't petty cash. It was money I had saved over time. Money I could have used elsewhere. But I had wanted to give Ryan something meaningful, a gesture of love and pride. I walked up to the table. No one stopped me. I reached down, picked up the envelope, and tucked it back into my clutch. I turned toward the exit. A groomsman, someone I barely knew, called out after me. "Hey, Evelyn, where are you going?" I turned back once, raised the envelope slightly in my hand, and said calmly, "Don't worry, I'll stay out of the frame forever." Then I walked away. Not fast, not dramatic. Just steady, like someone who had finally accepted a truth that had been waiting in the quiet for far too long. Evelyn didn't look back as she walked toward the gift table. Her heels struck the floor in deliberate, steady beats, echoing louder than the music that tried and failed to blanket the tension in the air. She had been humiliated with a smile, displaced with a sentence meant to be sweet, but sharpened like glass. "Why don't you stand near the bathroom wall? It'll keep the family photos clean," Vanessa had said almost cheerfully, her voice lilting above the string quartet's romantic swells. Evelyn had smiled, nodded politely, and walked away as if she didn't feel the heat crawl up her neck. But now each step was a decision, not an escape, but a declaration. The gift table was decorated like a magazine spread, pastel wrappings, silk ribbons, ivory linen. Evelyn spotted her envelope instantly. It sat tucked under a minimalist white box, its silver seal still unbroken. Her own handwriting looked almost foreign to her now. Inside was $5,000, a sum she had saved slowly without fanfare. Not just money, but intention. A blessing she had prepared quietly for a brother who didn't think twice before letting his bride humiliate her. She picked it up with the same care she had placed it there hours earlier, but this time her hands didn't tremble. A few heads turned. A couple of whispers started. She saw someone raise a phone, maybe to take a photo, maybe to record. Evelyn didn't care. From the corner of her eye, she saw her mother stiffen, lips pressed tight, but still not moving to stop her. Just sitting there like a dignified statue holding shame too fragile to name aloud. It was Ryan's friend James, or Jason, one of those interchangeable party boys who finally broke the silence. "Hey, Evelyn, where are you going?" She turned her head, not slowing her pace, held up the envelope slightly and replied, her voice cutting clean through the buzz. "Don't worry, I'll stay out of the frame forever." There was no gasp, no dramatic fall of silence. Just that moment of electricity in the air, the kind people don't speak about but remember for years. Vanessa's head whipped toward her, caught mid-laugh in a photo with her bridesmaids. The smile faltered. Her eyes narrowed for a heartbeat, then tried to mask confusion with apathy. But Evelyn saw it. She always saw more than people gave her credit for. As she passed row after row of meticulously placed white chairs, Evelyn caught sight of her mother again. Lorna didn't look at her. She leaned slightly toward Aunt Maureen, whispering something that made the older woman purse her lips disapprovingly. Evelyn didn't need to hear it to know. Probably something like, "She's always been too sensitive," or "not the right time for a scene." She wondered if they'd ever once asked themselves why she never made scenes before. Why she had been so quiet, so accommodating for so long. She reached the door. The sunlight outside cast long shadows across the gravel path. She hesitated for only a second, not out of doubt, but to let the weight of the moment settle. She was leaving the wedding of her only sibling. But she wasn't walking away out of anger. She was walking away from a room that never made space for her to begin with. From a family that confused her silence for contentment. From a brother who had taken her loyalty as currency and spent it carelessly. She walked through the doors and down the stone steps, the vineyard sprawling out in gold and green behind her. The breeze caught her hair, and for the first time in hours, she let herself exhale. It wasn't sadness that filled her. It wasn't rage. It was something cleaner, like closing the final page of a book you didn't realize had been exhausting you. She reached the rental car, opened the driver's door, and sat down. For a moment, she looked at the envelope in her lap, then placed it gently on the passenger seat. Inside that envelope was more than cash. It was her voice. It was the years she had spent being the dependable one, the selfless one, the invisible one. She had given Ryan her silence, her money, her support, never asking for spotlight, never needing thanks. But that day she took something back. Her place, her voice, her boundaries. And she didn't need to slam a door or throw a fit to do it. All it took was one calm sentence, one deliberate walk across the room, and the audacity to reclaim what was always hers. And back in the hall, no one rushed after her. No one shouted her name. They just shifted awkwardly, adjusted their ties, smiled nervously at one another, and carried on with the show. Because for them, she had always been replaceable. Until now. Evelyn arrived back at the hotel just before dusk. The sunlight was thinning over the hills, casting a soft golden hue through the window of her second-floor room, but it felt muted to her, distant and ornamental like everything else that day. She set her clutch gently on the table, took off her shoes, slowly, mechanically, then reached into her overnight bag for her laptop. No one had called. No texts. No curious inquiries about where she had gone. For all the noise her departure might have stirred at the wedding, the silence afterward was deafening. It confirmed what she had begun to suspect months ago: her presence had never been necessary, only her silence. She opened the laptop and typed quickly, almost muscle memory by now. A folder labeled R&R Logistics opened on her desktop, revealing spreadsheets, scanned documents, emails. She knew exactly where to look. Passwords, agreements, the financial infrastructure she had helped quietly maintain for nearly 2 years. It all sat there, cold, clinical, completely devoid of the warmth she had once poured into her decision to help her brother. She logged into the company's banking portal, her access still active, her credentials still marked as secondary guarantor. The numbers flickered across the screen: loan balances, upcoming payments, supplier invoices pending. She could already see the weak spots, the late payments masked by short-term credit, the over-leveraged contracts. The company looked sleek on the outside, just like Ryan's wedding, but behind it all it was fragile, hollowed out by pride and held up by her name. Evelyn stared at the screen for a while, her hand hovering above the mouse. She wasn't ready to act yet. Not fully. She just wanted to remember what she had signed up for, what she had risked for someone who let her stand beside a bathroom wall in a rented chair while strangers occupied her rightful seat. She shut the laptop with a soft click. The room felt heavier. The dress she wore earlier still hung neatly from the back of a chair, a silent witness to the unraveling of the day. She turned toward the small desk where the wedding invitation still sat. She had brought it with her foolishly, perhaps thinking she might frame it later. It was thick cardstock navy blue with gold trim embossed with Ryan and Vanessa's names in large serif type. She picked it up and flipped it over, then opened the folded note she had tucked inside a message she had written weeks ago and hadn't included in the envelope she later reclaimed. It was meant to be a surprise. A second gesture. To my little brother, the dreamer. May this be the first step toward a lifetime of strength, love, and grace. I believe in you. She had written it late at night after wiring another $3,000 to his business account. She had paused before signing it, wondering if she should say more, make it warmer, but decided simplicity would speak louder. Now, holding the note under the soft glow of a bedside lamp, she realized the words were weightless. Not because they weren't true when she wrote them, but because they no longer had a place. Her hand moved slowly, deliberately. She folded the paper in half, then again. Then she tore it. Not angrily, not dramatically, just cleanly once, then twice more. The pieces fell onto the table like soft snow. Evelyn exhaled and leaned back in the chair. No tears came. She had cried before many times in private over smaller slights, over the million invisible ways she'd learned to absorb pain in order to keep peace. But tonight was not for crying. Tonight was for listening to the silence, to the truth that had always been beneath the surface. Her phone buzzed once. A hotel notification, tomorrow's breakfast hours. Nothing from Ryan, nothing from Vanessa, nothing from her parents. She picked up the phone, stared at the blank call log, then turned it over face down. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't even hurt, not anymore. She had spent a lifetime cushioning everyone else's missteps, smoothing the edges, ensuring her name was never in the way. And now she was finally stepping aside, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Outside, the sounds of laughter drifted faintly from a nearby room. Another wedding guest, maybe. Another celebration continuing on untouched by what had happened. Evelyn stood, walked to the window, and looked out. The vineyard lights were twinkling in the distance, the wind rustling through the trees just enough to make the air feel alive. She took one last look at the torn note, then gently swept it into the hotel waste bin. Tomorrow, she thought, things begin to change. Not with rage, not with shouting, but with the quiet closing of a door. She closed the laptop, this time with purpose. Evelyn sat at the writing desk of her hotel room, the same one she had chosen for its quiet and its distance from the vineyard chaos. Her reflection in the mirror above the desk looked calm. Too calm, she thought. Not angry, not tearful, just still, like the part of a storm when the winds change direction and no one sees it coming yet. The laptop in front of her buzzed softly as it booted up. She had kept this machine clean of sentiment used only for finances, contracts, and emergency plans. And tonight, this was the latter. For months, Evelyn had known something wasn't right. Not just with Vanessa, but with Ryan, too. The way he dodged updates, sent vague thank you texts when she wired money and changed the subject every time she asked about his business strategy. He didn't respect her role in his success. He tolerated it the way some people tolerate a traffic light on a quiet road. The cursor blinked at her from the email draft she had prepared weeks earlier. She'd written it the same night she discovered Ryan had removed her from a company group email thread. It had stung, not because she wanted recognition, but because it was so cowardly. Her signature was on the loan papers that kept the business afloat. And yet in front of his new investor friends and curated social media persona, she didn't exist. The subject line was short. Termination of co-signer agreement. Immediate. The body was longer. Legal professional and cold. It cited her right to rescind co-signature status under Clause 9.4 of the agreement, outlined her withdrawal of credit coverage and included attachments, notarized copies of the revocation her identification, and proof of notification to the financial institution. She stared at the attachments for a moment before adding one more recipient to the CC line, her lawyer Mariana Holloway, who had always said, "You don't need to yell to be loud." Mariana had helped her prepare this escape hatch just in case. Evelyn had laughed at the time. What kind of sister plans a legal exit from helping her own brother, she'd said. Mariana hadn't smiled. The kind who's been used before. Click. The email was gone. Evelyn didn't sigh or lean back dramatically. She simply stood and crossed the room to where her suitcase sat half-packed. In her palm, her phone vibrated a silent notification from her banking app confirming withdrawal of auto-payment permissions. Ryan wouldn't know it tonight. He'd be sipping overpriced wine on a honeymoon he couldn't afford without her help. He'd smile in pictures with Vanessa, oblivious that behind the scenes the scaffolding was coming apart. His lease depended on her name. His next shipment depended on her signature. His credit score. Well, that depended on how fast he could scramble. She picked up her phone and opened their last text thread. It was filled with short, dry exchanges. "Hey, can you check if the funds cleared? Just a little tight this month. Can I borrow from the reserve? Appreciate it, sis." That last one had come 6 months ago. He'd never said thank you again. She typed only one sentence. "It's time you stand in the frame you chose." Then she hit send. No punctuation, no emojis, no need. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of meaning, of clarity, of years of being sidelined, finally catching up to the present. Evelyn walked to the small window, opened it slightly, and let the vineyard breeze drift in. She thought about the wedding photos that would soon appear online. Photos she'd been told not to ruin. The irony wasn't lost on her. They wanted a perfect picture, so she removed herself entirely. No drama, no scene, just absence. And that absence, it was going to cost them far more than they knew. Behind her, the laptop screen dimmed. Her phone didn't ring. Not yet. But it would. The moment Ryan tried to renew a contract or move money between accounts or negotiate with his Portuguese supplier, the fallout would begin. But Evelyn wasn't bracing for impact. She was already out of the blast zone. While Evelyn sat quietly in her apartment 3 days after the wedding, the consequences of her silence had started a chain reaction neither Ryan nor Vanessa anticipated. The honeymoon was supposed to be in Maui crystal blue waters, champagne breakfasts, staged selfies under string lights, but reality had followed them there. On the second day, Ryan's phone buzzed with an unexpected email from his logistics partner. The subject line was blunt: urgent contract review and payment freeze. Inside, a curt message cited the revocation of personal financial backing on the business loan. The company would be halting future deliveries pending clarification. Confused, Ryan called the bank. After 2 transfers and a tense hold session, the representative confirmed what he feared: Evelyn's name had been officially removed from all guarantor documentation. Worse, without her credit score and secondary income attached, the business no longer met the conditions of the loan. They had 30 days or less before foreclosure proceedings began. Panicking, Ryan called Evelyn, once, twice, then 10 times in a row. No answer. The screen read, "Call failed." Each unanswered ring pushed him further toward desperation. He turned to Vanessa, hoping she might mediate, but she was busy drafting an email to her father, Franklin Wyatt, who had just texted her. "You didn't tell me the company relied on your sister-in-law's credit. I'm pulling out until I see full transparency." Vanessa exploded. "What the hell? Ryan, I told you to keep her at a distance for the wedding, not to blow up our entire financial future," Ryan snapped back. "You wanted a perfect photo. Now we have a perfect mess." Ryan hadn't spoken to Evelyn in years with genuine gratitude, but now his voice trembled on the 5th voicemail. The background buzz of crashing waves from his tropical honeymoon couldn't mask the panic layered in his tone. "Ev, please just call me back. I messed up." By the 8th call, his tone shifted. No longer a man begging for help, but a brother demanding explanation. "You're seriously doing this because of a seat at a wedding? Grow up." His words were sharp but hollow, like someone flailing in water mistaking anger for control. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat at her kitchen table with a cup of untouched tea, her phone on silent. The call log blinked 12:15-23 missed calls. She stared at the screen but felt no urge to answer. It wasn't revenge that gave her peace. It was clarity. For the first time, Ryan was experiencing the silence she'd known too well. Somewhere between calls 30 and 40, she received a curt email from Vanessa's father, Franklin Wyatt, one of the silent investors Ryan had boasted about. The tone was sterile but unmistakably threatening, a request for an urgent clarification on the financial shift. Evelyn didn't reply. She simply forwarded the email to her lawyer with a single note: "Loop me in if this escalates legally." By the evening of the second day, her parents called. Evelyn didn't pick up. The voicemail from her mother was a mix of scolding and desperation. "Why are you doing this? You're tearing the family apart. Ryan's devastated. He hasn't eaten. We can fix this. Don't punish him." She pressed delete. By the third morning, the phone showed 168 missed calls. The final voicemail from Ryan came in at 4:17 a.m. His voice cracked this time. "Evelyn, I know you're listening. Just, please, don't do this. I'm your brother." Then silence. No defense, no anger, just a broken line between them. She finally opened her laptop, pulled up the last signed document Ryan had begged her to co-sign 18 months ago. There in ink was her quiet loyalty, now undone with a single withdrawal notice. She saved it again, this time under a new file name, freedom.pdf. Then she closed her laptop and let the morning sun spill over her table. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, Evelyn breathed deep and steady. This wasn't vengeance. It was resolution. Evelyn had just returned to her apartment when her phone buzzed again. Not from Ryan this time, but from her mother. For the first time since the wedding, her parents were reaching out. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then answered. "Evelyn." Her mother's voice came through tight with emotion. "What were you thinking?" "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean," her father cut in. "Pulling your support like that because of a chair. That's petty. You've jeopardized your brother's entire future." There it was. Not a question of how she felt. Not even a trace of concern about what had happened to her at the wedding. Just blame, condemnation, accusation. "I didn't do it because of a chair." Evelyn said, her voice calm but steady. "I did it because of everything. The years of silence, the disregard, the assumption that I'll always be there to clean up the mess." "That's not fair," her mother snapped. "We've always appreciated you." "No," Evelyn replied. "You've always expected me. Not appreciated. Expected. Like it's my duty to sacrifice because I was born first. Because I'm the daughter." There was a pause. Her father tried again, this time softer. "Look, your brother is going through a lot. Vanessa's upset. The timing is perfect," Evelyn interrupted. 3 days into their honeymoon and reality hits. That's exactly how long your golden child's fairy tale lasted. Her mother sighed, clearly exasperated. "Evelyn, please. Families go through things. You don't throw away your brother's livelihood just because you're upset. Do you want to know why I did it?" Evelyn said, her voice rising just slightly, not angry but fierce. "Do you want to hear what you clearly don't know? Because I stood as guarantor for Ryan's business. I put my name on the line. My credit. My savings. When the bank hesitated, I stepped in. I've sent him money, real money, multiple times when he couldn't pay his vendors. You think I walked away over a chair? I walked away because no one in this family has ever seen me as anything more than a buffer, a cushion for your mistakes." Silence filled the line. Then her father spoke, his voice hesitant. I knew you signed something. Ryan mentioned it, but I thought it was just paperwork. Something you'd do. Because you're his sister." "That's the problem," Evelyn said coldly. "You thought it was something I'd do. Because I'm Evelyn. The reliable one. The quiet one. The one who doesn't complain. The one who gives and never asks for anything in return. Do you even know how much I gave him? He didn't answer. $68,000, she continued. Over the last 2 years. Between wiring money, paying late fees, making sure his name stayed clean. And not once did I get a thank you. Not from him, not from either of you, not even a card. But I'm the villain because I stopped. Her mother's voice was soft now, almost a whisper. We didn't know. You didn't want to know, Evelyn replied. And now that I've stopped holding the weight, you're panicking. Because this family only functions when I'm holding it together behind the scenes. Her father tried to gather himself. We love you, Evelyn. No, she said. You love the version of me that's convenient. That doesn't speak up. That makes things easier for everyone else. You don't love this me, the one who's done being used. You're still part of this family. She laughed quietly. Really? Because at that wedding I wasn't even allowed to sit down. Another pause. Heavy. Shameful. Her voice dropped to a quieter, steadier tone. You once told me that Ryan was the future of this family. That girls get married but sons carry the name. Do you remember that? Her father didn't answer. Well, I do. I remember everything. And I finally see it clearly now. I was never the child you bragged about. Just the scaffolding you built the rest of the house on. A wall you leaned on. And now that I've stepped away, the cracks are showing. And with that, she ended the call. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She simply sat in her chair, surrounded by the quiet, and finally truly felt what it meant to reclaim her voice. Evelyn hadn't spoken to anyone in the family for days after that last call. She had braced herself for silence, maybe even a lifetime of it. What she didn't expect was a message from her cousin Linda, the kind of cousin you don't talk to every week but always hug tight at family gatherings. The message was short, direct, and carried more weight than Linda probably knew. Did Vanessa also cut you out of the wedding photos I was told to sit at the kids' table? My husband didn't even get a chair. Evelyn blinked at the screen. The knot in her chest didn't tighten, it shifted. She replied with a simple, yes. And then her phone rang. The conversation with Linda was like opening a sealed box in the attic, dusty truths, forgotten memories and indignation long buried. Linda confessed she had traveled 6 hours with her husband and 2 children just to attend Ryan's wedding. No one welcomed them when they arrived. No one thanked them for the espresso machine they brought from the registry. They were placed at a foldable table near the heaters. No name cards, no acknowledgement. I thought maybe I was overthinking it, Linda said. But then I saw the photos Vanessa posted. Evelyn already knew what Linda meant. She had seen them too. The heavily edited, sterile shots of Vanessa and Ryan surrounded by glowing friends in coordinated outfits, all filtered to a warm blush hue. No Evelyn. No Linda. No family. The parents were in one photo, blurry in the background like ornamental placeholders, and the siblings, absent. Deleted. Then came the twist Evelyn didn't see coming. Linda forwarded her a video. It had been circulating in a private group chat from one of Vanessa's bridesmaids. In the video shot just before the ceremony, Vanessa sat in a makeup chair sipping champagne, laughing with her stylist. I told the planner I want clean lines, Vanessa said. No clutter, no sad outfits, and definitely no sister-in-law ruining my bridal vibe. The stylist laughed awkwardly. You mean... Evelyn Vanessa smirked. She's sweet, but she looks like an off-brand librarian. Not the aesthetic. Evelyn stared at the screen. For a moment she couldn't breathe. The words weren't just vain, they were cruel. Not because they dismissed her appearance, but because they confirmed everything she had feared. She wasn't invisible by accident. She was erased by design. Linda wasn't the only one. Over the next few hours, Evelyn received messages from 4 more relatives. Cousins, nieces, a second aunt. All had been shuffled to undesirable spots, excluded from photos, or treated like +1s to their own bloodline. a pattern emerged. If you didn't fit the curated image Vanessa had in her head, you were strategically moved. The breaking point came 2 nights later when the wedding album dropped online. Vanessa had tagged the photographer a luxury name in the world of aspirational weddings. The caption read, "The day our forever began, surrounded by those who matter most." The comment section exploded. "Where's Ryan's sister?" one user wrote. "Why isn't the groom's family in any of these?" asked another. "I flew across the country for this and didn't even get a plate of food." A guest commented. The comments were relentless. Some were gentle curious, others furious. The wedding hashtag was hijacked by relatives sharing their side. Screenshots of seating charts texts that showed promises made then broken, even a photo someone took of Evelyn standing by the wall near the restrooms. It was grainy, but the look on her face, quiet resignation, was unmistakable. It wasn't just family members who commented. Strangers joined in too. The story had gone semi-viral on a subreddit about wedding horror stories after someone anonymously posted the details along with a clip of the video Vanessa's friend had leaked. Hundreds of upvotes. Thousands of comments. She treated her new husband's family like wallpaper. "I've never rooted for someone like I do for Evelyn. Imagine being this shallow and expecting no one to notice." Evelyn didn't post a single word herself. She didn't comment, didn't share, didn't defend. She didn't have to. The truth had legs of its own, and for the first time in years, her silence wasn't compliance. It was power. Evelyn had grown used to silence. For years, it had been the language her family chose when they didn't want to deal with discomfort, whether it was her accomplishments, her sacrifices, or her absence. But the silence that followed her quiet revenge was different. It was heavy, brittle, and fragile, like thin glass stretched to its limit. 3 days after the wedding, the cracks began to spread. Ryan showed up at her door on a Thursday afternoon, not with flowers or apologies, but with a file folder in his hands. His eyes were red, his tie hung loose like a noose around his neck, and his usually perfectly styled hair was disheveled. The man who once walked with the swagger of someone forever praised now stood with the weight of consequences on his back. "I didn't know where else to go," he said, his voice raspy. Evelyn stepped aside wordlessly and gestured for him to come in. She had expected this moment, but not like this. Not with her younger brother, a man so carefully protected from failure his entire life, holding legal paperwork with trembling fingers. He placed the folder on her kitchen table. She didn't open it. She didn't have to. "They're threatening to sue," he said. "The warehouse leased the import partners, even Brianna's father. They all said I misrepresented our stability. The bank won't return my calls. My co-signer, well, you know." His voice cracked on the last word, and he looked up at her for the first time with something that looked like fear. "Evie, please." She said nothing. "I messed up. I shouldn't have treated you the way I did. At the wedding. Before that. All of it. I was trying to keep everything perfect. The photos. The image. Brianna's family wanted. They had expectations. She said we needed everything to look curated, that you wouldn't care that you never liked the spotlight anyway." She still didn't speak. The silence stretched long enough for him to begin pacing. "I thought I was protecting the day. That it didn't matter that you'd understand. I thought, if the pictures were clean, it would make everything easier. But now all I have is an empty frame. I chose a pretty picture and now it's just a blank one." He stopped pacing, walked back to the table. "Evelyn," he said finally, using her full name. "I need your help. Again. Please. They're going to shut it all down. I'll lose the business, the house. Everything. You've always been there. Always. Just one more time." She sat across from him, folding her hands neatly in her lap. "You said that the last time," she said calmly. He flinched. "You said it would be the last time when you needed the down payment for the inventory. You said it when the supplier almost pulled out and I wired you $3,000 with no questions asked. You said it when I signed that loan, putting my credit and name behind something you hadn't even proven yet. I know, he whispered, and I'll pay you back. Every penny. I swear. She shook her head gently. This isn't about the money, Ryan. It's never been about the money. He looked at her confused. Then what? She leaned forward slightly. It's about the fact that you let them treat me like I didn't matter. You watched them erase me. From the table. From the photos. From your life. And you said nothing. His lips parted, but no sound came out. You told yourself I'd be fine because I always am. Because Evelyn doesn't need anything. But I did, Ryan. I needed you to look at me and say, she belongs here. And instead you handed me to the background. Again. A tear rolled down his cheek, but she didn't flinch. I'm not angry, she continued. I'm just done. He reached into the folder and pulled out a document. Please. If you sign this again just for a few more months, I'll make it right. She looked at the paper but didn't take it. Instead she stood, walked to her desk drawer, pulled out a small envelope. She placed it gently on the table in front of him. He looked at it, recognizing the handwriting. It was the wedding card she had written, the one she had torn in half and taped back together. Inside, there was no check, only a single note on plain paper. I'm no longer the shadow, it read. I am the frame. When he looked up, she was already walking toward the door. I'm sorry, he said again, this time barely audible. She turned slightly. I believe you, she said. But it's time you learn what it feels like to build something without someone always catching you. He left with the envelope. The folder still sat on her table untouched. Outside, the afternoon sun burned a little brighter, and Evelyn stood for a moment bathed in light. She didn't cry, she didn't smile. She simply exhaled and returned to the life she had built without applause, without acknowledgement, but finally on her own terms. The envelope arrived 2 weeks later. It was the same one Evelyn had once placed delicately on the gift table at her brother's wedding, tucked between velvet-wrapped boxes and monogrammed cards. Only this time it was mailed. No stamp of celebration. No return address. Just her familiar handwriting, elegant and unmistakably clear. Ryan opened it with shaky hands. Vanessa stood beside him, silent for the first time in days. She hadn't spoken much since the backlash, since the photos went viral, since her stylist's betrayal, since her inbox filled with strangers asking how it felt to marry into a family she worked so hard to crop out. He slipped the note from the envelope. No check, no apology. Just a folded piece of white paper with a message written in ink that bled slightly at the edges. I'm not your shadow anymore. Blood makes you related. Respect makes you family. Ryan didn't speak. He sat down and stared at the note for a long time. Maybe he expected anger. Maybe he thought she'd return with one last rescue, one last sacrifice. Instead, she had sent him what no one else in the family ever had, a line in the sand. Somewhere across the city, Evelyn sat on the balcony of her apartment, the evening sun casting soft light across her skin. She wasn't thinking about Ryan. She wasn't checking social media. She didn't need to. The world had spoken. Her silence had echoed louder than any scream. She opened a notebook, the same one she'd once used to jot down emergency transfers and budget breakdowns for Ryan's business. Now she filled it with something else, blueprints for a project of her own. Something quiet. Something hers. Something that would never again be handed away for someone else's convenience. As the light faded, she turned to the camera. Not for a selfie, not for proof, but to speak. My name is Evelyn, she said, voice steady. And this time I'm standing in the center of the frame. No violin swelled in the background. No dramatic music played. Just her words, firm and final. She clicked off the recording, closed the notebook, and walked inside. Her story wasn't over, but the chapter of being invisible was, and this time the world was watching. If you've ever felt like the background in someone else's story, I want to hear from you. Share your experience in the comments. because voices like ours deserve to be heard. And if Evelyn's journey felt like yours too, don't forget to subscribe. There's power in showing up for yourself, especially when no one expects you to. My story isn't just about a stolen seat or a missing face in a photo. It's about a lifetime of quiet sacrifices and the price of being overlooked. Have you ever stayed silent just to keep the peace, only to be erased from the lives of those you loved the most? If you have, share your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And if you saw even a piece of yourself in mine, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what comes next. I'm Evelyn, and this time I'm standing in the center of the frame.